Okay, welcome everybody. This is the image formats event for front range front end. My name is Jason Spiller. I'll be presenting to you tonight. We're going to go ahead and hang out here just a little while, see if we can get anybody else in. Looks like Meetup is having a problem, so I'm glad to see we've got a few viewers in that were able to get to the channel and have the link. First up, can everybody hear me okay? Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate that for the confirmation. All right, we'll wait just a couple more minutes here. Also competing with a Broncos game this evening, so who knows how that's going so far. Season's not going too great so far, but hey. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to Front Range Front End. This is a meetup for front end developers. Our talks cover HTML topics such as accessibility, semantic markup, CSS, new techniques, tools, JS, just vanilla JS, maybe some helper applications here or there, but we leave the full-on frameworks to the experts. Design, UX, UI, pattern libraries, animation, performance, image optimization. We'll be talking about that tonight. Our meetup is usually hosted by the kind folks at Code. We meet at least prior to these trying times. We meet the first Thursday of every month. Again, when we're in person, usually at 6:30 for a little bit of networking time in the beginning. But now with these virtual events, we do 7 p.m. Usually just goes for about an hour. I know, again, this is it's a Thursday night football with the Broncos, so I'm glad that everybody could join us. If you're not a sports ball person, or maybe you have a DVR and you can record it. This is going to be image formats, past, present, and future. This is my first long-form talk, so please be kind. I will be keeping an eye out on the chat, so if you see my head looking to the right every once in a while, just keeping an eye on the chat. Go ahead and pop questions in there whenever you have them, and I'll be taking breaks periodically throughout the presentation to answer those questions. So who am I? My name is Jason Spiller. I've been doing web design and development for over 20 years. I've been attending the Front Range front-end meetups for over 3 years now, and then, like I say, this is my my first talk, so I'm really excited to be presenting you hopefully some fun and entertaining, as well as hopefully you can learn something as well. If you want to visit me, my website's jasonspiller.com. You can see here at the bottom of the slides, I've got a link to the entire slide deck. It's all done through Reveal.js, which is absolutely amazing if you like working in HTML. So you'll be able to use that link to visit these slides and get the links to my GitHub, LinkedIn. Some of my hobbies, of course, being from Colorado, I got to do the outdoor stuff. I've been snowboarding since I moved here, camping my entire life. When weather permits, I love to play basketball. I am, or at least I was before the pandemic, a Special Olympics coach, and I coach basketball, soccer, and flag football. So absolutely love that part of my life. I'm also a gamer, but not in the sense of a modern day gamer. I much more appreciate vintage games, things that I grew up with. And when I say I've been doing web design and development for 20 years, that is professionally, so you can kind of get a gist of how old I might be. But when I'm not doing web design development and all these other hobbies, I also host a podcast. It's about action figures. My wife and I started doing that over 12 years ago. So probably one of the longest running podcasts that you've heard of. Definitely one of the longest running ones that I listen to, I guess. Not really, because I hate the sound of my voice, but our mantra is we're dedicated to the 4 greatest action figure franchises of the 80s and all time, and those, in our opinion, is Transformers, G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe, and of course Star Wars. So you can kind of see here just a sliver of my collection in my office. So yeah, I'm a middle-aged man that spends way too much money on little plastic men, women, and robots. So as far as where I started off, right out of high school in '94, I started getting my digital design degree, and I hadn't really been exposed to the web previous to that. But through that degree, it was kind of a brand new thing. I was designing for Netscape 1, i.e. didn't even exist at the time, and really not a lot of best practices out there, so my professors and I were really just kind of winging it, but I worked in the design lab all through college, so really gave me a lot of exposure and a lot of opportunity to work on web stuff way back then. Out of school, I did my internship here at Rocky Mountain News. For the people that remember that, I did ad layout for them. And then after I graduated, I moved back up here. I'm originally from New Mexico, moved back up here and got my first job working with Rocky Mountain Internet, a full service internet provider at the time. We hosted websites, we offered dial-up broadband, and then of course we had a custom development team in-house, and that's really where I cut my teeth on professional web design. Worked there until the big dot-com bust. After that, found it very difficult to find a job in web design. The few interviews that I did get, I kind of asked them why I hadn't received more responses. And back then they were getting over 500 responses for every web design job that they were posting. So decided to go back to school. I really found that I love the technical side of everything, and so got a computer science degree from Metro State. And out of that degree, I started working at a company called Association Voice and really dug into my love for the web. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, but let's go ahead and jump right into our topic tonight. So, as Merriam-Webster defines image, it is a noun. It is a visual representation of something, such as a likeness of an object produced on a photographic material, and more what we're talking about here, a picture produced on an electronic display, such as a television or a computer screen. And of course, that includes these little devices that all of us carry around nowadays. So, really kind of interesting when talking about imagery. You can have very strong imagery, such as this Bernie Boston photo titled "Flower Power." This was taken at a anti-Vietnam War protest in 1967. It is of protesters putting flowers in the barrels of soldiers, specifically MPs, that were there to try to keep the peace. Very strong, very compelling, basic definition of it's speaking 1,000 words here. So I'm sure everybody's seen things that really make them feel, and that's why imagery, photographs, art is a true art form. Imagery can also consist of this guy here, the Nyan cat, produced by Christopher Torres. Originally, this was posted to YouTube as a short 5-second video back in 2011. That video became number 5 in all videos posted to YouTube in that year. Little kitty with a Pop-Tart body, farting or maybe something else, rainbows out of the back. So in this they took that video and converted it into an animated GIF, and we'll be talking about those quite a bit and seeing a few more of them later in the presentation. One of the first images, and I still absolutely love this image, that was captured, at least that had a level of sophistication to it. They've discovered older pictures that are, stick figures and that kind of thing, but this one really has some amazing detail in it, and just is absolutely gorgeous. This is, and I murder names, so I apologize. This is the Chauvet Cave in France. This dates back to 28,000 to 30,000 BC. That cave houses once was thought to be the oldest representational art. They have more than 1,000 paintings of predators like lions and mammoths, and again, just unmatched in their sophistication for that time. Just absolutely beautiful. Now, when it comes to the web, this was debatably the first image posted to the World Wide Web. It was posted by Tim Berners-Lee as he was working on GIF support for his new project at CERN at the time. So this is a composite image of a photograph and then some text over there for Les Horribles Cernets. They were a particle physics parody pop band, basically a nerd girl doo-wop band, and it was kind of an inside joke. And like I say, it's debatable. There's 5 images that were on the web right in the beginning, and nobody quite knows the timeline, but I thought this was the perfect juxtaposition to that beautiful cave painting that we just saw. Early formats. So all of the early formats on the web were bitmapped images or raster images, and these basically make use of pixels, which we've all heard of, which I didn't know that was a conglomeration of picture elements. That was kind of interesting to find in my research for this. But they define an image as a matrix made up of rows and columns. Back then, obviously, we're talking about 28.8 baud modems and even 14.4, so transmission speeds were of the utmost importance. 2 primary formats dominated, and that was GIF and JPEGs, and we'll get to that GIF debate here later on as well. But these really had compression algorithms that could make files as small as possible for transmission over those small pipes. Here we can see an example of what the pixels look like in an image. So the lower circle there showing the water blown up to the little tiny pixels that make that up. So having worked in the web for so long, I've worked at pixel levels of images so much, and I always just find it amazing. I mean, you see purples and pinks and tans in there, and basically when you look down at the water, all you see is blue and maybe some white. So I thought this was a great example of what an image looks like when it's blown up, when it's in a raster or a bitmapped format. So transmission is still an issue today. Now, I think much less so with the images. We just have a lot of times huge payloads in the front end with front end frameworks where we got to bring a bunch of information down. So speed is still important. Now, this is 2015, so still quite a while ago, but good old Morpheus here. What if he told you that 2.34 million people still pay for AOL dial-up services? Now, that may just be to hold on to their email. I don't know why you'd want to hold on to an AOL email address. No judgments if you still have one. But yeah, I was joking with James yesterday. My stepdad, the father of somebody that's been on the internet, working in the internet for over 20 years, still had dial-up 2 years ago. He finally switched to broadband. Thank God. He finally listened to the benefit of having a wireless router, being able to be anywhere in your home or your yard to actually be on the internet. But yeah, that was just a couple years ago that he was still using dial-up. And I think the big reason why he changed is because everyone would send him photos, and he's like, they take an hour to download because they're all from, digital cameras or people's phones. The first big one here is GIF, Graphic Interchange Format. This was developed by CompuServe, a internet service provider in 1987, mainly to be used with its systems to reduce transfer time and clogging the pipes, basically. It sports a thing called interlacing, which allows rows of pixels to be stored out of order so that the received file can be displayed quicker. So basically what it did was it would only show you the odd rows first. And so you'd get kind of an idea of the image. And so only 50% of the image had to be downloaded before you got that first odd set of rows, and then it would bring in the even rows. Another great thing that it supported was transparency, but just one level of transparency. And then, like I say, of course, animation. Animation is really interesting in GIFs. What it does is it basically only stores what changes frame to frame. So you could have a really large GIF, but if only certain parts of it are changing, the file size isn't going to be increased that much because there's only those few pixels that it needs to update. Now, of course, the ability to do animation doesn't necessarily give you the right to do animation. As we can see, James Vanderbeek here, this is kind of a love-hate with a lot of people. People in my circles love animated GIFs, especially for reactions and chat groups and Slack and Facebook and all that kind of thing. Some people just absolutely hate them enough to where Facebook now makes you have to click on them to be able to see them. But the disadvantages of GIFs, so it only allows 256 different colors from a palette of several million. So it's basically 8-bit depth, which if you're familiar with video gaming, you have 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System. And trying to compress photos can look really bad, because as we saw in that one blown up picture of the pixels, there was probably 256 colors in that little tiny sample of the water. So you can imagine trying to do an entire photo where you only have 256 colors. They used a proprietary LZW linear compression routine to actually do the compression. And this kind of speaks to how old I am. There was a big worry in our team that this could mean that us as web developers might have to pay royalties. Us as a hosting company might have to pay royalties for using GIFs. It became this big to do. Finally, when it shook out, it really didn't come of anything because the royalties for that patent were actually being paid by the software development companies that created GIFs and that kind of thing. So really for the end user and for display on the web, nothing ever came of that being proprietary. But like I say, it did go around the industry back then in the 90s. Here we can take a look at what the transparency, what one level of transparency can really do. So on the left here, you see full alpha transparency. So this is just a plain circle against a black background. And you can see all the shades of gray that are basically transparency. So when this is zoomed out, it gives you a nice smooth line. Well, when we replace that background with a 40% gray that I've done here, then you can see here's where where there was black, you can see the gray. But anywhere that was outside of black, even these where it's just off a shade or two, is now kind of distilled in the image. And this was called haloing, or maybe that's what I called it, and my colleagues called it. But basically, when you zoom out, you would kind of see a black border around your white circle if it was on a different background than black. And this is where it really caused us to get into the pixel level when we were designing graphics back then for the the least sophisticated imagery you could possibly imagine, just interface elements and things like that. But that's the drawback of only having one level of transparency. Like I say, I've mentioned GIF here several times. This again was a great debate, and I think it still rages on today. But GIF versus GIF. So I've got a picture here of GIF peanut butter. I have always said GIF. GIF sounds really weird to me. I know there's lots of people in the industry that use GIF. The creator of the GIF, with a hard G, Steve Wilight, declared the acronym GIF should be pronounced with a soft G as GIF. This was during a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Webby Awards in 2013. So the creator of it says it's a soft G. I am still going to use a hard G just because I've been doing it my whole life. And to me, the soft G sounds funny. So that's up to you which side you choose of that debate. Next up, a JPEG, Joint Photographic Experts Group format. This significantly compressed larger images. It allowed multiple levels multiple level options for compressing an image. Most familiar to me is Photoshop. You could choose anywhere from 10 to 100, and even 100, that would be the highest quality image. Even that would compress images considerably. Best thing here is 16.7 million colors compared to GIF's 256, so a full 24-bit color depth. And so made it perfect for images. Of course, no transparency, no animation there. It also sported a progressive display that allows users to see see an initial low quality version of the image, and then as more of it downloaded, it would sharpen. So it'd be kind of like out of focus, and then slowly come into focus. And then if you didn't use progressive, then you see all the memes back in the day as people wait for a photo to download, and it basically would just start at the top and slowly download, and you would reveal the picture. So nice options there. Worked for years. But there had to be something different. There had to be something better out there. JPEGs had a lossy compression, so they basically throw out pixels. But what happens when you do that is you get that copy of a copy degradation there. So if you save a picture down from the web, and then you optimize it again, and then you optimize it again, you're basically just losing data every time you do that. Another disadvantage of JPEG was even if there was a large swath of solid color in an image, it would still compress it and work its magic, and you would no longer have flat areas of color. Now I realize this might be kind of hard for people to see on YouTube like this, but here you can see on the left the JPEG where you're getting this artifacting here in this what should be a solid color, with GIF nice solid flat color. So it really did come down to GIF was there for your line art. If you needed transparency, if you needed animation, JPEG was there for nice, big, beautiful colors or photographs, that kind of thing. Excuse me. And I'm sorry, I've been looking up this whole time. Should be looking down at my notes here. Next up, honorable mentions. XBM, this is XBitmap. This used a snippet of C code to represent the contents of an image. The problem with this is it had to be a multiple of 8. It could only be black and white because it was basically on or off. And this is one of the earliest, along with GIF, one of the earliest supported image formats. Again, one that I was not at all familiar with. So maybe somebody has some experience with that that's even older than I am, if that's possible. And then bitmaps, BMPs. So this was a format created by Microsoft for use on their operating system. What's kind of interesting is even though it's a Microsoft format, even though there's no compression in it, it's supported by all major browsers. Now, of course, without any compression, without any interlacing or progressive display, it's a really bad choice for the web, and even though it's supported, nobody should ever use that. And then another one that's an oldie but a goodie, still in use today, is the ICO. This is the Microsoft Windows icon file format. This wasn't used for content. This was primarily used for fav icons or favorite icons. For when you would add a page to your favorites, it would save this little icon next to the name, or what we probably see more regularly nowadays is it's the little icon that appears next to the tab on the window you're in. Used to be you just created an ICO file, named it favicon.ico, dropped it into the root of your website. Boom, you had a cool little icon in your what would have been back then a title bar. But with that, that has come a long way. Nowadays, we use manifests to be able to create a group, an entire collection of icons and background colors for those icons to be used across multiple devices, Windows phones, Androids, Apple mobile devices, desktop computers, everything. You can basically denote what image, and in some cases, especially with mobile devices, what the background of the icon should be, that kind of thing. It can be as robust as you would like it to be. You could have 30 entries in there, or it can be something as simple as saying, hey, here's one image. This is my fav icon. Most people use PNGs nowadays because of their full alpha transparency, which we'll get to here in just a second. But again, that good old ICO still works fine if you drop that in the root of your folder. Modern formats. So these are things that all of us should be fairly used to seeing nowadays and implementing and using. There's one in the middle there, the APNG, that I wasn't familiar with, but we'll touch base on that as well. But first up is our good old friend Ping, portable network graphics. PNGs can be lossy or lossless. Like I mentioned before, they have full alpha transparency support, so not just that one level. You can have multiple levels of transparency. And their interlacing routine doubles performance. So instead of GIF, where it would bring in just the odd rows, with a ping, it starts displaying graphic content from the top, bottom, left, and right. And so you can get a somewhat clear representation of a photo or of an image, I should say, with only 25% of the image being downloaded. Now again, should you ever be using images that take that long to download? Yeah, probably not. Most people have broadband, so it's negligible. But again, you may be serving pages to someone on dial-up. You may be serving pages to people on a mobile device that only have 3G, which is still faster than dial-up, but you always want to take in consideration how much you're compressing, the performance of the file format you're using. So PNG being lossy and lossless, and with that transparency, we can take a look at our example that we had previously. So here's our white circle on a black background. And then we swap out that background, and now we can see there's no artifacting, there's no haloing, it just blends right into the background. And this was absolutely huge at the time. I mean, we did so many little tricks to make background images line up with imagery in the forefront, tons of things trying to trick the background, making sure something laid out just so you wouldn't see that weird artifacting. And now we had the ability to have imagery that could sit on any background. You could change the color of the background. You could do all kinds of stuff. And so this was just a huge, huge boon to the industry at the time. And I just remember the first time we as a team said, okay, we're going to start using PNGs, and this is kind of how that made me feel. This is still one of my favorite GIFs. I'm not a huge GIF guy, but this little girl just slamming the bowl on the ground and throwing her arms up in triumph. Now this is maybe even better served for SVGs once we get into those, because they take it to a whole nother level. But I love this little girl. Again, the one that I wasn't familiar with was the animated portable networks graphics. Basically an animated ping. It can be lossless. It supports a 24-bit color depth. So again, an animated GIF, as you can see in the pixelization of that animated GIF with all the little dots, that you could only have 256 colors per frame. This allows you to have a full 24-bit color depth for every frame. Again, another advantage of the ping is the full alpha transparency, and that's also supported in this animated file format. Now here's the rub. It's almost fully supported in production. It's so close. And this really depends on what your team decides to support, or you as a developer decides to support for your client or for your own personal use. The big one that's lacking in the support is IE, and this includes all the way up to IE 11. Now Edge does support it. So, and I know some development houses might have the ability to say, hey, we don't have to worry about IE anymore, but I'm pretty sure most full large productions probably still need to at least support that IE 11, maybe not 10. Also Opera Mini, which doesn't support a lot of things, and then a couple Chinese browsers, QQ and Baidu. So again, something I haven't used, but could be a huge boon for you if you don't have to worry about that support. Now, the true rock star here of file formats, in my opinion, the SVG, the scalable vector graphics. So we've talked about, everything we've talked to up to this point has been a raster image, or a bit-mapped image, where it's using pixels to display the imagery. SVGs were I shouldn't say they were the first format on the web to support vector drawings, considering that that's what Flash was, and we have Canvas and stuff like that. But it's the first one to be widely implemented and widely used across the industry. It's XML based, so that basically means that everything can be searched, can be indexed, can be scripted, can be compressed. There's SVGs out there where they take all that text information and compress it. It supports interactivity and animation. So if you're not familiar with what a vector image is, so instead of using a pixel, you're using instructions. So you're basically saying, to represent a square, you're saying I have an image at coordinate 0, 0, coordinate 50, 0, coordinate 50, 50, and then coordinate 0, 50, and I might have swapped those 0, 50s, but and this is going to be red, and it's going to be at this position in the photo. So as you can imagine, simple shapes are super easy to do, but as you get into complex artwork, like SVGs, vectors are definitely not made for photos. If you get into anything too complex, it kills all the value of SVGs because the weight is so heavy because there's so much instructions to create something. The benefit, though, of being based in instructions is you can zoom in on it and it'll never lose resolution. So let me see. I've practiced this before. Let me see if I can actually do this now. Open link in a new tab. Yeah, see, that didn't work the way I'd hope. Give me 1 second. Full screen. Oh, there we are. Okay, so this is Smashing Magazine. People are probably familiar with this if you've been working in front-end development or design for any period of time, but very modern looking website. They take pride in redesigning their sites and keeping up with trends. You can see the little graphics they've designed here. Looks like it would work for a PNG or a GIF, but these are SVGs. They actually do one of the best jobs I've ever seen with the zoom. You can even see the menu squeezing down, based on what they want you to see. And we can get this really big and it holds up. So you still see everything is super sharp. We have the added benefit with CSS to do this as well. But with these images, if we scroll down here, you can see even at this size, they're just still perfect resolution on here. I mean, and you of course see it with text and all that kind of stuff. But this is the true power, well, not the true power, one of the powers of SVGs. It was developed by the W3C consortium. It has a feature set that includes nested transformation, so you can animate things within an SVG. It's got clipping pass, alpha mask, filter effects like drop shadows, all that kind of stuff. Things that can easily get overused. But like clipping pass, if there's any designers watching, I mean, that's like a godsend to be able to do clipping pass on images. Like I said, it can also include bitmapped images in the SVG. Now, there you're kind of killing the value of it because you're adding, data in and making the file heavier. But it can be done. SVG has its own DOM. It uses CSS for styling. It uses JavaScript for scripting. You can have text in your SVG. So basically what that does is it allows internationalization and localization of graphics. It appears in plain text within the DOM. So it enhances the accessibility of graphics. And that's really what, you can't ask for much more nowadays. Let's see here. Let me get me back over here. So those are kind of the big ones that we use now. Now people are probably familiar with WebP. This is a Google format. And then I have never heard this spoken. Maybe I should have gone to dictionary. Maybe they have a pronunciation, but I'm going to call it a GIF. And then we have JPEG 2000, which I had been familiar with, and JPEG XR. now, as much as these are kind of the future formats, the things on the horizon, they're not quite as usable as some of my favorite shoes here that actually do exist. They lack the auto lacing that was portrayed in Back to the Future 2 here. But as great as these might be, these new formats, right now they can pose a little bit of an issue when implementing them in full production sites. Like I mentioned with WebP, it supports both lossless and lossy compression with full transparency. So we've got those benefits of the PNG and the JPEG there. Animation that can support lossless or lossy frames with transparency. And Google likes to boast that it has a 25% savings in file size compared to PNGs and JPEGs. Now, I did come across a couple articles kind of debunking that in their own tests, but the big thing for these, and they're pronounced weepy, the big thing for these weepy things, being that they're Google, they're page speeds, insights, and Lighthouse that people use for testing the performance of their website will ding you if it believes a weepy, or if I'm going to tell you why it knows why a weepy is better than a BMP, JPEG, or PNG. Especially when you use Lighthouse. What Lighthouse does is it brings down a copy of every single image on your website that's not an SVG. It converts it on the fly to a WebP here, and if there's more than an 8K file savings on there, then it'll ding you on it and suggest that you use WebP formats. The problem here is there's no support in Safari right now. So Safari desktop still represents just over 8% of the browser market. And even more important, the mobile version of Safari on all of our favorite iOS devices is at about 23% of the browser market. So still, not a thing that you can just be like, oh, great, I'm going to do this and Google's going to be happy. You'll really have to examine whether the savings are worth having to put another little step in your image implementation process for your projects. And then for me, I do all my work, at least with bitmapped images, raster images in Photoshop, and there's no support, at least the last time I tried, there's no support for even opening them in Photoshop yet, let alone exporting them. So that's kind of like, again, if you need to have that, that 90% page speed in Google, and that's one of the things your team uses as a benchmark, or maybe your client's using that, then this is something you should definitely look into. HEIF, high efficiency image file, supports both lossless and lossy compression with full transparency. 50% savings in file size compared to JPEG. So WebPs were touting 25%. This is giving you 50%. And one of the disadvantages of the WebP format is to get that higher compression rate, you also sacrifice quality. So they like to say that it's, the quality is comparable, but you definitely lose some image quality gaining that 25%. This is saying we'll get 50% savings without any loss of quality. It was developed by Moving Picture Experts Group, which, if you've ever dealt with video, this is MPEG, the company that made the famous MPEG 4. It supports multi-frame images with multi-frame compression, a key feature for doing efficient HDR. So if you're a TV person, you know HDR was the big rage a few years ago. Now it's pretty much standard on everything. It's where you get really blacks and really vibrant colors and that kind of thing. It also has multi-focus and multi-view images. Now, here's maybe why the WebP isn't supported. This is only supported by Apple and only supported in iOS 11 or above. It doesn't even include Safari right now. So this one is definitely down the road, but something to keep an eye on. JPEG 2000 and JPEG XR. So JPEG 2000, like it says, was created in 2000 to be the successor, I should say, to the standard JPEG. Both of these support and suffer in the support department. With only iOS for, and I think Mac OS for 2000, and only IE support on there for XR. The big thing with 2000 that makes it work well in other applications, not necessarily the web, is it has extensive metadata support. So it's used a lot in medical systems and that kind of thing, because you can just store a ridiculous amount of info besides the visual. So picture an x-ray where you can have the entire patient's chart in the metadata, so an application can read that. And then of course XR has the better HDR capabilities. Funny thing about XR is its support is actually going in reverse. So it's supported in IE, but Edge chose to not support it anymore. So I would say at least XR seems like a dead format. Maybe 2000 will make a comeback here and lead at some point, but yeah. And so that kind of makes me cry also. Circling back to that animated GIF. So WebP is all obviously looking promising. Again, to me, with the animation and the full support of transparency and the 24-bit color depth, it could really be promising if the compression is really there, but not saving a ton. It's kind of a universal format, so that's awesome. But the HEF seems way down the road. Those JPEG, updates seem like they probably won't make it at all. So the future's not too bright for image formats right now. I really wish I could have said that, oh my God, there's all this amazing stuff. When I started doing the research for this presentation, I really didn't know what the future formats were. I was hoping to find something amazing. So hopefully you're not too sad either that you sat through 50 minutes to just find out that there's not really anything amazing on the horizon, at least. But full support's always been slow on the web. There's lots of things you can do with graceful degradation, stuff like that. So keep your head up. Speaking of heads, my daughter's on a husky trip right now. We're talking about getting another family pooch, and she is just enamored with huskies. So she helped me pick out this wonderful animated GIF here. Nothing says a question to me better than the crooked head nod, inquisitive look of a puppy. So with that, does anybody, I know I kind of burned through that, still can't believe it took 50 minutes, but anybody have any questions, comments, anything they would like to share with everybody watching? I'll give it some time here. The comments are well, the entire presentation is on about a 30-second delay. give you guys some time to type some stuff in. And with that, I do want to thank you guys for joining us here tonight. Again, hopefully that was somewhat educational, somewhat entertaining. Hopefully it didn't bore you to death. You can find Front Range Front End on the web at frontrangefrontend.com. You can follow us on Meetup, where you can get notified each month about the next event coming up. That's meetup.com/front-range-front-end. No hyphens in our web URL. And then, of course, you're watching us right now on YouTube. We would love for you to subscribe to us, because right now we have one of those obnoxious YouTube IDs as our channel URL. And if we get a few more subscribers, we get to get a vanity URL. So that would be nice. But please subscribe to us on there. Hit the notification bell to be notified when we post new stuff. Even when we are able to meet in person again, we will still record all of our meetups and post them on there as we've done in the last year. So, not seeing any questions. Never know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Good because I covered everything you could possibly want to know, or bad because it just wasn't an interesting enough topic that you wanted to ask any questions about. But I think I am going to go ahead and end the presentation now. If you have any questions for me whatsoever, you can leave comments on meetup.com on our page, and I will answer them there. Email is super easy, jason@jasonspiller.com. Nice thing about, not that Jason Spiller is super common, but nice thing about getting your own domain back in 1995. So yeah, send me an email, hit me up on Meetup. I'm also on Slack in the Denver Devs channel. So thank you, everybody. I hope you had a great time, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and like our co-organizer likes to say, if you had a good time, please invite a friend next time. Thanks.